Hello, hello. It is time for us to have a manga chat. It's been a while since we've had one of these, and this video has kind of been a long time coming insofar as for a while I've had enough series that I wanted to talk about. I had enough stuff to say that I wanted to make one of these, but I was just too busy to actually sit down and record this video. I had my birthday party, I had a choir concert, work's been busy, I've been apartment hunting, all this stuff going on, making it impossible to find time to just sit down, ramble on about manga for a while as I am wont to do. At the same time, though, it's like this is kind of one of the beautiful qualities of manga. When I get busy, I don't actually read less manga. If anything, I end up reading more manga because busyness for me often entails a lot of like subway rides. What am I gonna do? Read manga. It involves a lot of meetings at work where what am I gonna do on my other monitor? Read manga. And staying up to date on series, reading through new series, whatever, doesn't really take a whole lot of time. It's something that you can fit in a chapter here and there in an otherwise busy schedule. Something that makes the medium just so beautiful and addictive and fits in with my lifestyle so well is this quality of manga. But as a result, we have piled up 6 whole series that I want to talk about, to varying degrees, to varying levels of comprehensiveness. Some of these I don't really have a whole lot to say, but I wanted to just kind of note a recent development or update or whatever. Other ones we'll probably talk at some length, so let's just dive in. The first one I wanted to talk about is a very exciting recent update in Yotsuba. I'm sure you've likely heard, but in the latest chapter of Yotsuba, the Azuma cinematic universe was confirmed with a canonical crossover between Yotsuba and Azumanga Daioh. People going nuts for this. It's amazing, great little chapter. In the series itself, it is not presented as some major mind-blowing moment. Obviously, to the characters in this universe, that is not the famous Osaka from Azumanga Daioh. It is just Osaka. But to fans, obviously, a very, very historic occasion. It's like our first Yotsuba chapter of the year, and the first since probably almost an entire year ago. They're coming out very, very infrequently. I don't know how much more we have left. My feeling is that it's very likely to end when Yotsuba starts attending school. And this latest chapter was very much focused on the fact that she'll be going to school soon, and she's learning about school and learning about what teachers are and everything. So we gotta savor every single page, every single panel. This is one of my favorite manga of all time. Not a controversial take that it's one of just the greatest examples of the slice of life genre. A true masterpiece, critically acclaimed, universally beloved, and the de facto mascot of 4chan, which somehow ceremoniously coinciding with this was taken down in a hack. Maybe down forever. I don't know. I haven't really followed it too closely. The prospects of it coming back. I haven't used the site regularly in like 6 or 7 years. But I did used to be a very, very frequent 4chan poster. For better or worse, I spent a lot of time on I saw the daily Yotsuba threads. I participated in those. I reread the series along with the rest of the board. Yotsuba's presence, a contrastingly, juxtaposingly wholesome and kind and adorable element, next to the savagery and the unfiltered PvP action of the rest of 4chan. So it seems fitting that this major climactic moment in Yotsuba happened, and then a couple months later, 4chan just wiped itself off the face of the earth. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot to say. Just wanted to mark this historic occasion. I'm really looking forward to getting the latest volume of Yotsuba in English physically when it comes out, which I think is quite soon, or maybe already. It's a series I come back to often, a series I reread often. Every chapter is just so full of delight. Truly like a top 5 all-time manga for me. Uh, I'm sure there's a lot of people that have that in that level of belovedness and that level of specialness. They have Yotsuba up there. Okay. Next, let's talk about Green Yuri. The guy she was interested in wasn't a guy at all. Just the fact that I'm including this in our little manga chat, that I'm finding it noteworthy to talk about, probably already says enough. And I'm sorry if this is spoilers, but there was, in fact, a pretty major development in the last few chapters of this series. And given the genre and given the conventions and structures of Yuri manga, I'm sure you can guess what that is, and your guess is probably pretty accurate. But I would say if you're not reading this series and you're a fan of Yuri and you appreciate Yuri for those scenes, you're the type of reader that looks forward to those moments and how they handle them, and getting that beautiful cathartic feeling of everything finally happening and being brought to light and explicitness. This was a good example. I was very, very impressed. Was it perfect? There's a couple things that I kind of quibbled about. To me, I think when you have this moment, it should be like the focus for quite a bit afterwards, and you should just kind of relish in the feeling of like triumph, in the feeling of we made it. And in the past it was very typical, you have this sort of moment and then the series just ends, sometimes in the very next chapter, sometimes at the end of that chapter. This is true of Yuri and hetero romance and everything, that it just builds up and up and up and up and up all the way to that point. You finally hit that big climactic moment, and then the whole series just ends. And that's obviously very frustrating, and I'm not advocating that we go back to that. But I think in contrast, the pendulum has now swung so far into, hey, guess what? We promise we're going to continue after this point. There's going to be a lot more. You're going to actually get to enjoy this kind of new scenario, this new paradigm shift. So we're going to get into a new plotline like right away. And we're even going to like integrate scenes of other plot lines and stuff into this big climactic moment, to make it an ultra giga climax that other plot elements are getting incorporated. And the parallel plot line of her and her uncle both have these big cathartic moments and blah, 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 blah. And it's kind of like, okay, that's all well and good. And I understand your intent, and your intent is good. Your heart is in the right place with this. And it is better than the alternative of like, well, that's it, we're done. But to me, it kind of steals away some of the kind of transcendental power of that moment when you're so eager to incorporate it into something bigger. It should be something that just kind of bursts out and stands alone. And yeah, you spend some time just sort of relishing in it, in the afterglow of the fact. The way I'm talking about this is getting quite lewd. Anyways, very, very good series. One of my favorite Yuri running right now. Not that I'm super, super into the genre these days, but I like to at least keep up with a few. Alongside hetero rom-coms. Can't get too het. And this is a great one. This is a great one to pick up if you're in the same boat as me. Okay, next we're going to talk about Mariko at 80. Sanju Mariko. This is a series that I saw being discussed on the manga server where I hang out. It looked really, really nice, so I picked it up, got it caught up, and now pretty regular chapters are coming out in Scanlation, which is awesome. This is a completed series that ran for like 16 volumes or so. The Scanlation is really starting to just scratch the surface, getting to chapters that are about 4 volumes in. So there's a lot more of this to come, but I wanted to highlight it, to give my recommendation for people to read it, to give you kind of a breakdown of what it's about and why I think it's so good. It is about Mariko, pictured here, who is indeed Sanju years old. 80 years old. And Mariko at 80, right? Why was I trying to remember my Japanese numbers? And she has been a prolific novelist her entire career. but in her elderly years, starts to kind of encounter some challenges and friction. She lives in this tiny house with both her kids, her son and his wife, and then their son and his wife, and then their baby. So there's 4 generations under one household for a total of 6 people, and they're all kind of living on top of each other, and it's very kind of awkward. And she starts to feel just like a burden. She can't really contribute much to keeping the household moving smoothly. So she decides to run away, and she goes to live at a manga cafe. She makes friends with a cat. She makes some other friends, the staff at the manga cafe. She rekindles a connection with a man she had a crush on when they were both much, much, much younger. His wife has died. They begin this sort of late stage romance. And she sort of rediscovers a passion in writing. Like, she'd always been a successful writer, but now she feels like she truly has something new and fresh to write about. And the whole thing kind of revolves around this theme of, even though she's 80, even though she clearly is coming to the end of her life, she still has years remaining. She could still have decades remaining, and that she still has so much to give the world. There are still so many experiences she can have. There's still so much she can contribute, so many relationships she can build, so many new avenues of her life that she can explore for the first time at this advanced age, which is just beautiful. Truly, truly beautiful. What a wonderful message for manga to have, and what an amazing character to create and explore and deal with so much love and honesty and passion. She has some rough times. Things don't go well for her in the latest arc. The magazine that she'd been writing for this entire time said, "We can't publish you anymore. We're trying to shift gears and attract younger audiences. And frankly, all of your fans are also old people. All of your fans, they've been fans of you for decades, but now they're dying. And once they're dead, they can't buy the magazine. So who's reading you? Why are we publishing you?" And it's brutal. It's like brutally honest. She has this conversation with the head editor. She's really taken aback, and it's this kind of continual thing of setbacks, often to do with her age, of changing times, of changing audiences, of struggling for relevancy and connection and understanding. But then, often again, through her advanced age, her advanced wisdom, all of the connections and skills she's built over the 8 decades she's lived, she finds another path. She finds a solution. She cuts through and does something else. And it's just kind of that pattern. It's very engrossing on this kind of just dramatic level. The series is a lot more dramatic than I expected. There's a lot of like twists and cliffhangers and kind of antagonistic forces. But it never skews into like melodrama. It never feels so kind of absurd or over the top. Instead, it's always kind of grounded in just sort of the reality of her character and just this very lived in, down to earth depiction of her world and her friendships and Tokyo. Really nicely balanced in that regard, as I find a lot of the best josei manga are, where you get kind of the element of the inner feelings of the character that sort of bloom and blossom out and color the perception of the world, color the events that are happening, but never shifting too far away from just a very grounded depiction of reality either. Really, really, really good stuff. Very, very excited to keep reading it. And also, the first manga I have ever recommended to my mother. I was reading it, and I felt so much like there were scenes that really captured her relationship with her mother, where her mother as well is of course quite old and is dealing with this feeling of feeling burdensome, of feeling like there's nothing she can do, of feeling like at her age all she can do is kind of take from people and she has nothing left to give. And my mom pushing back against that and encouraging her to see it differently and encouraging her to value her presence in the world and her relationships and her connections. But that it's tough, that all of her friends are gone. All of the agency she used to have is kind of falling away bit by bit. And I think this manga really, really captures that feeling, both of the very legitimate concerns and then the true opportunities to kind of break out of that perception, to recognize that there's actually so much more. And at the same time, it also really made me think about my relationship with my mother, who is obviously nowhere near as old as Mariko or her mother, but is struggling with mobility issues. She had to have her hip replaced. We went on the whole big trip to Japan, which I talked about at length last year. But my mom had a really hard time getting around sometimes in Japan, and that was very frustrating for her. And I'm always in debate with her that I'm like, can you please come move to Toronto where I live? You'll have so much more things you can do. You can be much more capable. Like, now that you've retired, you don't need to live where you live because of work anymore. But she doesn't like that idea. Doesn't think she'll like living in Toronto. That's very plausibly true. But I'm thinking down the line, it's going to be tough if you're way out in the country. She lives right now way, way out in the middle of nowhere. How will I support her if she's, having even harder troubles getting around, or if she can't drive anymore? Am I expected then to drive for 5 hours out into the middle of nowhere to go see her and help her out and run errands for her? Or should she come here? And this is something that the manga addresses. There's a side character who's another old lady that Mariko befriends, who had lived in the countryside her entire life until she had a fall, and then her daughter convinces her to come live in Tokyo, and stay with her. And I just was like, oh my god, this is how it's gonna go. This is, eventually maybe something like this will happen with me and my mom. And the way it unfolded in the manga, I was like, this feels so plausible. This has so much respect for all of the feelings of the characters and their histories, their blend of consideration, but then fears, and then the blind spots they have around each other. I was like, this feels so real. It feels like I'm seeing into my future. So I was like, Mom, you gotta read this. You gotta read this. And she started reading it, and I think she was actually really enjoying it. But I don't know. You gotta kind of make manga reading part of your lifestyle, I think. It's gotta become a habit. So for her, she always is reading novels, or doing crossword puzzles, or, she already has these kind of downtime activities. It's tough for her to work in another one that involves, opening a different app. That sounds like it's so easy, but really, yeah. If you typically sit down and open a book, or you open Instagram or whatever it is, and instead you have to open Mihon and read manga, it actually does take a while to build up that muscle memory. I'm not being ironic or whatever. That is a lifestyle change, the way we kind of default act in those moments of downtime. Anyways, this is a big rambling summary. I hope you get across the idea that I love this series. I'm really, really impressed with it. Very quickly, it has warmed its way into my heart. And kudos to the Scanlator for working on this. I hope they can do the whole run of it. It's very long, though, as I said, 16 volumes, so we'll see. If they can't, I hope somebody else picks it up, because I definitely want to see the ultimate conclusion of Mariko and her lovely little cat. Okay. Alright, let's talk about something completely different. Let's talk about Kinnikuman. I have been reading this off and on for quite a while, where I would just kind of read an arc, maybe, and then read some other stuff. It was just sort of in rotation of manga on my phone. And my main goal was to read the original run it had in Weekly Shonen Jump from, I believe, the late 60s to the early 80s. Very long run, 380 something chapters, I think. One of the true foundational texts of Weekly Shonen Jump, and as a wannabe Jump scholar, as somebody that's trying to research the entire history of Weekly Shonen Jump and read all these notable series. It was something that was always quite high on my list, something that I knew I would probably enjoy to a great extent, and that I was excited to get to. Um, I was especially motivated by someone in the manga server that I just mentioned, who loves Kinnikuman, that was excited to talk to me about Kinnikuman. And as I read it, I would post screen caps of pages I was on, offer some commentary, learn some trivia, have some good discussions. Really, really just fantastic reading experience. I wish I could read all manga with that sort of guide alongside, especially these big historic series. Just so much fun, to kind of have that small nested community of the two of us discussing Kinnikuman in the broader manga server. Yeah, so I had a great time reading this. I have already talked about it in several of these manga chat videos, and to be honest, I don't remember exactly what I covered in previous ones. But the latest run that I read all the way up till the end of the Weekly Shonen Jump run. The vast majority of that, the meat of that final stretch, is the big final climactic arc, the succession battle for the throne. So we can talk about that for sure. I think it's like by far the most ambitious arc they've had. Probably one of the most ambitious battle shonen arcs that Jump had run at that point. And still, in terms of scope and length and just the number of characters and the number of things that happened, there aren't too many, even in like modern Jump history, that I think would measure up to it. So what's going on here is Kinnikuman is finally ready to ascend to the throne and become the king of planet Kinniku. However, to do that, he needs the approval from all of the gods of Chojin. And there's 5 evil gods who oppose the rule of Kinnikuman, and thus have created this vast conspiracy that there could be 5 or 4 other potential successors to the throne, or 5 other. 4, yeah. There's 5 evil gods. Each one of them possesses somebody. They possess other denizens of the Kinnikuman planet, and convince them that they could be the actual true successor to the throne. And then there's this whole thing of there was a mix-up at the hospital, and the baby that they took may not actually be Kinnikuman. So yeah, there's Kinnikuman Mariposa, Kinnikuman Big Body, Kinnikuman Zebra, Kinnikuman Soldier, and Kinnikuman Super Phoenix. What an amazing, diverse range of names! It defies all earthly sensibility. Like, what the fuck? You have a category that has soldier. It's like, okay, that's like the job. It's like a class. Then you have one that's like Super Phoenix, which seems like a luchador type name. And you're like, okay, well, it's like wrestling, so that kind of makes sense. Then you have Zebra. It's just like an animal. Big body. A physical descriptor. And Mariposa, which I... like, what does that mean? Like, what what does any of this mean? So then, to determine who is the true successor of the throne, each one of these guys recruits a team of 5, and then they have a 5v5 tournament. So that's like 5 matches per tournament set with 6 teams. That's a lot of wrestling, and you see pretty much all of it. Like, there are a few matches that get almost off-screened where you just kind of see a couple pages depicting it between, the 2 teams that don't have Kinnikuman on it at the time or whatever. But pretty much all of the battles get full little mini arcs in the same way that they've done the entire series. This is what I'm saying. The scope of this, the ambition of it, the length of it is colossal. It's crazy. And then, on top of that, it couldn't be so simple. Of course, there are all sorts of twists and developments that emerge. We find out about Kinnikuman's brother, that Kinnikuman's soldier is secretly Kinnikuman's brother. Pretty much everybody from all the past arcs comes back to make some sort of contribution or appearance. And in doing so, there's usually some sort of twist that they, in fact, are connected to one of the new characters that are forming the teams of the evil Kinnikuman potential successors. And so, like, every single fight usually has an element of, oh, one of Kinnikuman's old comrades or one of his previous rivals turned comrades actually has some sort of secret, intimate connection to the dude Kinnikuman is fighting, or the dude Kinnikuman's buddy is fighting. So now we have, like, an elaborate flashback involving the two of them that, you know, adds relevance to the current battle. And then there's usually also, like, some sort of broader reaching gimmick in the fight that connects to, like, training arcs that have happened before, or, like, characteristics, like, you know, there's this whole battle against Prism Man, that Prism Man can reflect a light that damages Chojin. So then Geronimo, who relinquished his Chojin status, has to fight against him, but then he, like, re-Chojinifies, and then Brocken Jr. de-Chojinifies. So, like, suddenly all the, like, mechanics of the series, things like the muscle power and all the numbers involving that, and all these kind of, like, cumulative powers that Kinnikuman has gotten. Oh, Buffalo Man's horn is in my arm, and blah, 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 blah. All of that starts coming to bear, too. It's like a lot, man. I will say, like, it's a bit much. If I could make a comparison to something else, appropriately enough, it reminds me a bit of the Hunter x Hunter Succession battle arc that we're currently perpetually, probably for the rest of my life, or at least Togashi's life, in the middle of. Two big commonalities. One is just so many characters with so many factions and so many hidden motives, all vaguely scheming at each other. And two, to that end, nobody will shut the fuck up. Everybody is yapping for huge speech bubbles, just packed full of text, explaining shit at each other. Because, as I said, there's so many plot points being brought to bear in every single fight. And the way it's written, and this might also be a facet of how it's translated, but I think it's also just kind of in consideration of how complicated the plot is up until this point. And you can't expect these kids to remember everything week by week, or have to read the entire thing up until then, or whatever. So the way it's written is like, oh no, they've attacked the string that's holding up the page of prophecy. Oh, this is a whole other thing, the muscle prophecy. The page of the muscle prophecy that depicts Kinnikuman's brother Ataru, Kinnikuman's lost brother Ataru, who ran off on his own. If that string breaks and the page falls into the flame, then Ataru will be wiped from existence. Already, we can see that his feet have disappeared just from the heat that has reached the bottom of the page from the fire. If they break that string, it's all over for Ataru. And this is just like one big paragraph that someone's saying that could be summarized as, oh no. But because they're so concerned about making sense and people understanding the flow of the plot until that point, everything has to be restated. That's Mammoth Man's Tusks attack that had defeated Brocken Jr. in the past and uses high-speed nose fencing gained from the fact that he is the sole survivor of the Mammoth Man tribe whom Robin Mask had researched. This whole big spiel accompanying the Mammoth guy going, "Ma!" And you're like, I could probably have guessed that the attack is going to be kind of scary. You didn't have to explain the entire history of the character, and every single time we've seen this attack, every single time he does the attack. But that's just how it is. It makes reading it a little bit tedious, I'm not going to lie. But, so we have those two commonalities with my hated Succession War arc in HXH. But there is still fighting. There is still wrestling at the core of this. And no matter how much convoluted crap gets piled on top, no matter how much the characters are just rambling on at each other, at the end of the day, and this hasn't happened like at all in Hunter x Hunter in like years, the characters run up to each other and punch each other, and that's awesome. The fight scenes, I think, have just gotten better and better and better throughout the series. They understand better how to convey like the weight and speed and impact of wrestling. They get more creative with the moves. The gimmicks of all the characters, as I said, sometimes get very, very complex, especially the sort of like constituent gimmicks of the match. There's the one where they're trying to find armor pieces that are embedded in this like dartboard looking floor, and then there's like a big NES controller that they can use to like glitch the system, and you're just like, what the hell is this? Get to the wrestling. But then they do get to the wrestling, and that makes a big, big difference. What it really occurred to me, and this is a big, big topic, but we've talked before about how like I got into wrestling fairly recently, dating my boyfriend who's a big fan, and it was just sort of a profound realization that at first I was like, wow, this is a lot like Battle Shonen manga. But then I started to realize, no. Wrestling's actually older, and Battle Shonen manga is like wrestling. And Kinnikuman is one of those great big connection points because it's one of the most foundational Battle Shonen manga, period. And the way that it builds a lot of Battle Shonen tropes that would go on to be fundamental in Battle Shonen, is very, very directly lifted from wrestling. Stuff like, enemies becoming friends. That's the classic heel-face turn, that you introduce a guy as a villain in wrestling, and he wins over the fans, and he becomes very popular. And so after the big climactic moment against the company's big baby face, they clasp hands, and all is forgiven, and now he gets to have a face run, too. It's a way to kind of like double dip on that character and keep momentum and heat for the character going. Just kind of when you've exhausted all the stuff you can do with them as a villain, make them into a face and enjoy that run as well. It's like a very practical thing from a booking perspective that via Kinnikuman became a staple of Battle Shonen. Vegeta becomes a friend. The enemy to friend pipeline, which is in everything. But the one that really struck me is, in Battle Shonen, the enemy often has multiple forms, right? Frieza transforms, Cell transforms. There's non-Dragon Ball examples. In Bleach, everybody transforms when they're about to be beaten. They get a crazy final form. And in Kinnikuman, that sort of thing happens a lot, but it feels way more like the way they would introduce new characters for a wrestler in wrestling. So let's take a look at the example of the character Satan Cross, who's one of the villainous characters recruited by Kinnikuman Super Phoenix. Big climactic battle. First you see him and he is like a centaur. And you're like, oh, okay, that's like a gimmick. I get it. You gotta fight a centaur. That's kind of cool. It opens itself up to a lot of moves. And then, as a super technique, the bodies split apart, and it's actually like two people, and they do this crazy 2-on-1 finisher. And you're like, alright, that's crazy. That's something. But then you also find out that Satan crosses like a ninja Chojin, and he battles up against the ninja that's on Kinnikuman's side, and they have this like ninja arts battle, which is very, very fun. But you're like, why is this centaur man a ninja? Like, what? And then you find out that he's actually Asura Man's teacher, that he is Samson Teacher, who had appeared in a flashback like 5 arcs ago. That guy lived, and he lived because this demonic parasite Chojin infected his body, and that's what turned him into a centaur. Okay? So that has nothing to do with being a ninja. That's just like another thing that once they had done all the ninja stuff, and I guess probably Satan Cross was popular, or they had more ideas for centaur fighting, or they needed something to do with Asura Man, or whatever. For any number of reasons, they're like, well, guess what? This guy's also this other character that we knew about. And it's like, to me, the obvious inspiration here is when you have a wrestler that's a big hit, a big favorite, but you kind of exhaust the gimmick of one character. What they'll often do is retool them. They take on a new image. They have a new persona. They do different moves. This usually coincides with some switching of allegiances, but not always. Sometimes they just come back in basically the same role, but with a different costume. And that was a very, very practical thing, right? Because you only have so many physical human beings, but sometimes you gotta like mix things up. And if you've got somebody that's obviously very talented, that the audiences are already excited about and will get on board with any new thing they're doing, you just kind of like cycle them through a whole bunch of characters. And I feel like we now again see this chain where that's what was happening in wrestling due to the practical concerns of wrestling. It was adopted by Kinnikuman, again to kind of address some practical concerns, but very much just sort of paying homage to that wrestling tradition of everybody is like 6 different things, and that those things just sort of emerge match by match. And now that's become like a staple of shonen is battle shonen villains love to transform themselves, love to kind of come back as a new character that represents a new threat and kind of exists at a new power level. It's so fascinating. Isn't that so fascinating? Like it really is like all from wrestling. Other things, though, had no home in wrestling whatsoever, but feel sort of like Yudetama's attempt to make wrestling more trackable in the manga format. So power levels are all over the place in Kinnikuman. And I don't just mean they're scattered all over the place, but it really is all over the place what they mean and when they're evoked and how much sense they make. And I think it's basically like when you're watching wrestling, there's always a lot of little things that convey how powerful a character is. You know, and they really make sure to sell things such that you understand, oh, this guy's like a really hard hitter. You know, wrestler A, boom, does the clothesline. I'm a little stumbled. Oh, but geez, then tag in wrestler B. That dude looks huge. He hits the clothesline. I'm going flying back. And that's, you know, a real art of wrestling. That's something that I think is a big part of the performance of wrestling, is conveying stuff like that. In Kinnikuman, I think they wanted to really make this explicit. So they started, like, putting numbers to it. And then for a while, that was, you know, kind of a thing to do in Battle Shonen, is to give people, like, power numbers and stuff. But I think, again, that was, in Kinnikuman, that was an attempt to kind of, like, you know, compensate for the fact that it's a little harder to depict how hard you're getting hit in manga. Not necessarily, but I think that's maybe a limitation they expected to hit. And so they're compensating for that by saying, oh, well, Mammoth Man is a 10 million power Chojin. But then Super Phoenix is a 50 million power Chojin. And they start doing like all this like math with this stuff, and suddenly it becomes like vitally relevant that it's like, well, this guy's only 5 million power, but if he inherits the willpower of 1 million power people, that means he's at 11 million power and he can repel Mammoth Man. And it's like really strange that suddenly it all comes down to that. Technique be damned, strategy be damned. It's just kind of number versus number. But again, in wrestling, there are a lot of moments like that where it's like 2 people grappling, and it kind of comes down to, canonically, quote unquote, how strong they each are. Who's the stronger one is going to dominate in that situation. And they wanted some way to kind of like convey that same feeling and to set up those expectations. What else do I have to say? I don't know. I had like a little checklist in my mind of topics I wanted to cover, but there's a lot. There's a lot to say about this. It really is such an amazing series. The way it evolves too, from such a silly gag manga to, you know, a wrestling parody that's still kind of mostly jokes, to this ever more crazy, ever more supernatural, way more over the top powers and stuff that even though it strays so far beyond anything that could happen in wrestling, still really feels like wrestling. It feels like wrestling in its low moments too. All the times where I'm like, just fight, get to the fighting. I think that when I watch normal wrestling too. When they're running some skit that I think is stupid and it's going on too long, I'm just like, just fight, just fight. It's the same. The highs, the lows. It's all wrestling. It's amazing. So I do look forward to reading. There's like a lot after this. So my friend that's into Kinnikuman that I mentioned before that I was chatting with the whole time about it recommended that I just continue reading this run of like plain Kinnikuman when it returns to serialization in the mid 2000s, I think, is when it came back. I can't remember, and has now continued today. So that's quite appealing to me. I'd like to get caught up and read this week by week. It's not in Jump anymore, but it's in some other magazine. Seems like a lot of fun. The art style evolves very dramatically during that gap. And then, yeah, in between that time, there is continual works by Yude Tamago in this universe involving, like, Kinnikuman's kids, I think. But I was advised to not read those for now because they're in, like, a different continuity or something. And basically, when Kinnikuman OG returned, they basically got kind of, like, retconned out, is my understanding. So I would like to read those at some point just because I really like Yude Tamago's work so far, and I love the world of Kinnikuman, and I just want to see as much of it as possible. But yeah, that's my plan. I will, at some point, I'm not sure when, I'm going to take a fairly big break from the series, I think, and read some other stuff, but at some point, yeah, I'll return to it, read the rest of that, and we'll talk about it. It's Manga Chat. This is what it's all about. It's such a great series. The scans at the beginning suck. I know that's turned a lot of people away. Power through it. You may not like the gag comedy at the start. It's very silly. It's not for everybody. I quite like it, but I'm stupid. But power through it. Once you get to like the meat of it, the actual wrestling, the battle shonen stuff, I really think if you're a fan of the genre at all, you'll really appreciate it. You'll have so many moments where you're like, oh man, this is where it all started. this is like, it's so good. It's so foundational. Anyways, okay. So after I finished Kinnikuman, wanted another long manga to read in similar situations on the subway or whatever. Decided to read Sket Dance, which is the previous long-running manga by the author of Witch Watch. If you've watched my weekly Shonen Jump tracking, what am I doing? I read the whole magazine and I talk about it. If you watch those, you can tell I'm a big fan of Witch Watch, so I was excited about this. And I think I actually like it even more than Witch Watch. This is excellent stuff. Like Witch Watch, it's kind of like a sitcom-y type. Oh, my camera froze. My camera froze, but the audio is still recording. La 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 la. La la. Okay, we're back. It's kind of a sitcom-ish type comedy. Broad cast of characters. Every character kind of has their own comedic mode. Chapters sort of switch gears and focus on different types of comedic avenues. And then, like Witch Watch, every once in a while they will throw a major curveball and have actually a fairly dramatic plot line. With Witch Watch, those are when the crazy supernatural battles start happening and they have to fight warlocks. Or their moments of true kind of emotional intimacy with the characters. Here you still get the emotional intimacy, but instead of anything like crazy supernatural, instead it's like harrowing personal histories full of crazy twists and almost this like soap opera type level of dramaticism, which I think if I explained on paper any of these dramatic plot lines, you would go, that sounds dumb, but somehow they really work. It's just such a well-written series with such well-realized characters. Not realistic characters, very over-the-top characters, very silly characters, but truly lovable characters that you're genuinely excited to see in a wide range of scenarios and stuff. Our main three, especially, are just so goated. I love them so much. I'm blocking Switch's face. Switch, Basun, and Himeko. Basun especially is an MC like no other. Very, very few characters written like him. Just the blend of extreme competency in some areas, social quirks and weirdness, but just like such a foundation of good-heartedness, helpfulness, selflessness. It's great, and I think it's a character type that could only exist in manga. That it's just so positive and likable, with no feeling of like requisite flaws or nothing has to be non-charming. Nothing has to be like disturbing or troubling. Everything about him is just likable. Great, yeah, really great stuff. Really, really enjoying it. I'm about halfway through right now. Wish it would never ever end. Also very weird because I read the crossover chapters with Witch Watch, which take place in like contemporary time, so like 10 years after the end of Sket Dance, and feature the characters aged up by 10 years. And when I was reading it, I was like, I don't know who these people are. I don't really know what's going on. These are nice chapters though, blah 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 blah. But now I'm like, oh snap! I know what happens to all these people. I know, like who they end up with, what they're doing in the future. There's probably going to be some like pretty dramatic plot lines in the manga that I like know the ending to already. So I'm just like doing my best to forget everything I read in the crossover chapters. Just trying to put it as far as I can out of my mind. I don't know. It's fine. In the end, it's about the journey, not the destination. Even no matter what I could have learned, I don't think it would really impact my enjoyment of the series now, which is good. Yeah, this is becoming a favorite. It's gonna stick with me, I think. Like, the dramatic ones are weird as hell and genuinely unsettling, but have really beautiful cathartic moments, and that's all good. But I think what really sticks with me is just like the way they live their lives in the day to day. The way like the sitcom element emerges around their personalities, again Boston especially. I really hope it leaves me with an inspired feeling to be more like them, to be more like the Sket Dan. They're such good guys. All right, finally we're gonna talk about Wataten because it just ended. Wataten ended. After 16 volumes, 130 something chapters, this ran for probably close to a decade. The anime had come out when I was in Japan. Maybe it was more like 6 or 7 years. Because the anime, I think, was fairly soon, like maybe a year or two after the manga started. And the manga, yeah, the anime came out in 2018, 2019. Early 2019, late 2018. So I was in Japan when it was airing. I'm putting this all together like in my head when A, I could just look it up, and B, it doesn't matter. But it ran for quite a while. What can I say about it? If you watch my video where I review the anime, it's like I really stumble over myself because this is like innately a creepy show. It's about a creepy character in a creepy situation. It's unabashedly about that. And moreover, it's about kind of like learning to build a healthy relationship out of an inherently unhealthy relationship. And all of that feels kind of distasteful and maybe morally wrong. And there's not really much I can say about it without like either like condemning the manga or condemning myself. So that's kind of a lose-lose. But I don't know. The anime was very, very good. Really excellent job by Doga Kobo to capture just this sort of idyllic, tranquil, day-to-day life feeling. Very well-structured episodes, excellent production. And again, this depiction of inherently a very creepy, inappropriate situation. Depicting it with not like love and not like justification and not saying this is actually good, but instead depicting it as kind of like it's too late now. It's already happening. It is what it is. And that's the attitude the manga had like right up until the end. And I know the ending was like frustrating for some people that expected something more to happen. In any direction, any sort of resolution. But I expected something like this right from the start. It's a level of ambiguity and vagueness and potentiality that I think is reflected by everything else in the series, which is again this feeling of it is what it is. Should this be happening? No, not even the manga thinks that. But is it already happening? Well, evidently. And therefore, should we try to just somehow make it as functional and healthy as possible? I suppose. It's a weird attitude, and I think manga excels in these spaces of like moral ambiguity, where it's almost like the author has laid the desires of their soul bare upon the page, which is the heart of all manga, the beauty of the medium. One weirdo with no support from anyone can make it into a nationally published magazine drawing whatever crazy shit they want. That is manga. It's a beautiful dream. And so this sort of manga exists in sort of a liminal space where it's all about laying that desire bare while also constantly situating it with judgment, with an acknowledgement of this isn't appropriate. It's like other art evolves, or other art appears through kind of a resolution to the artist's feelings. You go through something and you write a book about it, and you're through it, and the book kind of reflects a resolution to your feelings. Manga is different. Manga, you present your complex. You present what is unresolved, and then chapter by chapter, week by week, month by month, year by year, you fight through it. You seek resolution. You seek an answer to the complexes, and it doesn't come. and instead, it's just every week you're chastising yourself and you're laying yourself bare. And you're going, I want this even though I shouldn't, but I don't know how to want anything else. That's manga. And that's Wataten. And now it's over. And what is this manga about? I'm not going to tell you. You can find that out on your own. Oh, good God. Okay. That's all I had to say. Those are our manga for this month, week, whatever is manga chat. Gonna keep reading Sket Dance, probably pick up some other series. And I don't know, I'm still really fervent about this quest to become the Jump Scholar, to read a whole lot of Weekly Shonen Jump manga. And I have another project in mind along those lines that I'm actually really excited about, and every time I work on it, I'm very excited about it. But I'm just so busy, and it's like making these sorts of ad hoc videos. Like, this is gonna take like an hour. Finding an hour in my day, already hard enough. Finding the time it's going to take for this other project, impossible. So far, impossible. Well, we'll see. We'll see. You'll know it when you see it. Okay. Goodbye for now. Let's meet again in the next manga chat.